My sister Chloe took a magnum of champagne, shook it like a race car driver, and aimed it at my head during her own wedding reception, shrieking, "This was supposed to be about me." When I ducked, she howled, "You ruin everything I've ever had." I just stood there, speechless. That was a year ago. 2 weeks ago, her ex-husband found a scrapbook in her car filled with pictures of my house, my car, and my husband, with his eyes scratched out. I was standing on the 50-yard line at my high school graduation, about to give the valedictorian speech, when I heard my sister let out a blood-curdling scream. Chloe had crumpled onto the bleachers, clutching her ankle. The entire ceremony paused. The principal ran over. You see, she'd always been a professional scene stealer. During my 8th grade spelling bee final, she had a sudden nosebleed in the front row. The night I got my driver's license, a phantom asthma attack, every single milestone. It wasn't until 4 years later, when I got the save the date for her wedding, that I saw my chance to finally play her game. My boyfriend Liam was next to me when I opened the ridiculously ornate card. I immediately pressed myself against him. "We should elope," I whispered in his ear. "What? I thought we were saving for a house." "No, we're doing it now." The timing had to be perfect. Her wedding was in 6 months. I wanted to be a newlywed at her ceremony. First, I had to get him on board. He knew all about Chloe, but this felt different. I was sitting in our dark living room, showing him a slideshow I'd made of every single time Chloe had sabotaged me, when he finally sighed. Okay, you win." He pulled out a ring box. "I was waiting for our anniversary, but if we're doing this, we're doing it right," I cried. Actually cried. The next few months, I became Chloe's #1 wedding planner. Anything to make her think this was the single most important event in human history. "Oh my god, sweetie, you need a custom wedding website. I'll build it for you." I created a blog. 6 months until my sister's fairy tale wedding. I insisted on helping with the guest list, making sure all my friends were there to witness it. I knew I was on the right track when she showed me her wedding dress design, a near-exact replica of a sketch I'd made in my journal when I was 16, a design I'd never shown anyone. That snake had been snooping in my room for years. So, when the morning of her wedding arrived, I smiled my most supportive smile while helping with her veil, and when she started getting misty-eyed, it took every ounce of my self-control not to smirk. If only one of us could have the perfect wedding. I'm glad it's you. Even Dad said it's for the best since I'm the more down-to-earth sister. Your photos will be epic. You know, I adjusted her diamond earring carefully. "You deserve all of this." "No drama today," she replied. "This is my day, of course." Well, if there's one thing my monster sister can do, it's throw a party. There were cascading white orchids everywhere. A string quartet, even though everyone knew she was marrying a trust fund baby. She insisted on making a grand entrance that cost more than my car. I wore a simple cocktail dress, but I had a certain glow. Nobody was paying attention to me though. Not yet. Or so I thought, until Chloe pulled our dad aside. "God, look at Maya. She looks so plain." If I didn't know better, I'd think she was trying to fade into the background. Dad chuckled. "Well, you've always been the star, honey. Good thing too for the pictures." When they were finally done preening, the reception began. To the happy couple, the best man toasted. Everyone cheered. Cameras flashed. To be honest, I was ready to stand up and make my move during the open toasts, but that's when a wave of emotion hit me. I ran to the restroom, my eyes welling up. When I came back out, everyone was looking at me with concern. The words just spilled out. Sorry, I said, dabbing my eyes. "It's just, Liam and I eloped last week. I'm just so happy, and seeing this, it's a lot." The silence was a physical thing. Then the eruption. "Eloped?" my Aunt Susan shrieked. "Oh my god, Maya." The crowd's attention pivoted from Chloe to me, like a spotlight. Hands grabbed my arm. Questions flew at me from all sides. "When did you do it? Where are the pictures? Was it romantic?" Chloe's face went from ivory to crimson to a deep, blotchy purple. I saw her chest begin to heave. I braced myself. I feel faint," she wheezed, clutching her throat. "Someone help." But everyone was crowded around me. Even her own maid of honor was asking me about my dress. "Hello?" Chloe screamed. "I'm having an allergic reaction. This is my wedding." Dad glanced over, irritated. "Chloe, honey, not now. Maya just got married, and she did it without a fuss." That's when Chloe snapped. Truly snapped. She grabbed the magnum of champagne, and for a moment, I thought this was it. Death by expensive bubbly. "This is my day," she screamed, mascara starting to run. "Mine. I've been planning this for 2 years." Liam grabbed Chloe's arm and wrestled the bottle away from her while she stood there, body trembling as if she were having a fit. The bottle thudded onto the plush carpet and rolled under a table as Chloe's knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor and began to howl, a sound so primal the string quartet stopped playing. Her makeup streaked down her face in black rivers as she beat her fists on the ground, screaming that I'd ruined her life, that I always ruin everything, that this was her one perfect day. Dad rushed over and gathered her into his arms, cooing and rocking her while completely ignoring me as I stood there, stunned, with Liam's arm around me. At least 30 phones were pointed our way, recording the entire meltdown for posterity. Chloe's new husband, Kevin, managed to get her into a chair where she sat gasping for air, her chest rising and falling so rapidly I thought she'd hyperventilate into another dimension. He whispered to her, trying to soothe her while the guests stood around in horrified silence, unsure of what to do. Liam grabbed my hand, and pulled me toward the exit, his face pale. He said we needed to get out of there before it escalated further. That's when Dad stormed over and slapped me hard. The crack echoed through the ballroom. He screamed that I was a selfish brat who couldn't stand to see my sister happy for 1 second. The room went utterly still, except for Chloe's theatrical sobs, and I heard several guests gasp. My cheek stung, and I touched it, feeling the hot imprint of his hand. Liam moved between us, telling my dad to back off or he'd call security. My friend Anna appeared, announcing loudly that she was calling the police if anyone else touched me. Kevin finally pushed through the gawking crowd, his face a mask of disbelief at what his new family was becoming. That's when Chloe leaned over and vomited onto the dance floor. A puddle of champagne and wedding cake splattered across her custom-made shoes. Kevin jumped up, saying they had to go to the ER because her heart was racing from the stress. Dad immediately pointed at me and yelled that if Chloe's marriage fell apart, it would be my fault. His voice boomed across the entire ballroom. Kevin helped Chloe up and started walking her out, but she turned and screamed that if her marriage was ruined, she'd make sure mine was too. At least a dozen people had their phones out recording her threat, and Liam grabbed my hand, saying we were filing a police report. We sat in Liam's car in the hotel parking garage while he called the non-emergency line to report the assault and the threats. I texted Anna, asking her to collect any videos from the reception, while my cheek throbbed and my mind replayed the scene on a loop. 2 officers met us about 30 minutes later and took our statements, watching the footage Anna and 4 other guests had sent. They took photos of my red cheek and advised us to file for a protective order on Monday. 3 hours later, we were home, and Liam was making me tea while I sat on the couch, trying to process it all. He sat beside me and admitted he was terrified of what Chloe might do next, suggesting we stay at his parents' house for a few days. I refused, determined not to let her chase me from my own home. My phone began vibrating nonstop with notifications. Videos from the wedding were already on TikTok and Instagram with hashtags like wedding meltdown and bridezilla. Comments flooded in, calling Chloe unhinged and my dad abusive, while others argued I was an asshole for announcing my elopement at her wedding, even if she was a monster. The doorbell rang at 7 o'clock the next morning, a long, insistent buzz. Liam peered through the peephole while I hid in the bedroom. It was my dad, his face blotchy and swollen. He held the buzzer down and started banging on the door. Liam told me to stay put and open the door, leaving the chain on. Dad immediately tried to force it open, screaming about the videos. He demanded I come out and get them taken down. His voice grew louder, shrieking about how I'd humiliated Chloe and destroyed the family. Liam braced his shoulder against the door, telling him to leave. Dad started kicking the door, screaming that I was a jealous creature who'd always wanted to ruin my sister. Our neighbors started peeking out of their doors. Mrs. Gable from 3B stood in her doorway, filming with her phone. Dad saw the audience and yelled even louder about how I'd orchestrated the whole thing to wound Chloe. He said I was evil. Liam finally told him he was calling 911 if he didn't leave. How did Chloe know about that dress design from when Maya was 16? That means she must have been violating her privacy for years. I wonder if the stress of a wedding can really push someone that far over the edge. Dad backed away but continued screaming threats from the hallway for another 10 minutes. My phone rang an hour later. It was Kevin. His voice was hollow. He said Chloe was sedated at their hotel, and the doctors were concerned about a potential nervous breakdown. He begged me to come to a family meeting to sort this out. I could hear the desperation in his voice. I told him I'd only meet in a public place with Liam present. Kevin agreed, suggesting a coffee shop downtown in 2 days. Those 2 days were a blur of anxiety. I couldn't stop worrying about what would happen next. My hands trembled as I made an emergency appointment with my therapist. The waiting room was full, and I saw a few people staring. One woman whispered to her friend and pointed at me. They'd seen the videos. Dr. Anya called me in and let me talk for an hour. She said my reaction was a trauma response and warned that this level of stress was corrosive. She gave me a prescription for anti-anxiety medication and told me to avoid any further conflict. 2 days later, we walked into the coffee shop. Dad, Kevin, and Chloe were already at a table. Chloe looked wan and fragile, but her makeup was flawless. The moment we sat down, Dad demanded I apologize. He said I needed to admit I'd planned the whole thing. Chloe sat there, the picture of a wronged victim, dabbing at dry eyes and saying I'd always been envious of her. She claimed I couldn't handle that she was more beautiful and more successful. Kevin just sat silently, but I saw his jaw tighten when she said that. Dad kept interrupting, his voice rising as he talked about the trauma I'd inflicted on his poor daughter. Other patrons started staring. Chloe suddenly reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She slid it across the table with a triumphant smirk. I'm suing you for intentional infliction of emotional distress and slander. Her lawyer believed she had a slam dunk case. Liam immediately pulled out his phone and called his cousin Emma, who was a litigator. Chloe's face fell when she heard him explaining the situation to a real lawyer. We left the coffee shop with Dad screaming threats at our backs. That evening, Anna showed up with takeout for Liam and a pint of salted caramel ice cream for me. She'd seen the new wave of social media posts and wanted to check on us. She sat on our couch and pulled out her laptop. Anna had kept a digital folder of evidence going back years, documenting Chloe's behavior. There were screenshots from my graduation party, where Chloe announced a fake internship abroad, pictures from my 21st birthday, where she claimed food poisoning, posts from my first art show, where she had a sudden, dramatic fainting spell, events I'd completely forgotten where Chloe had manufactured a crisis. Anna had been quietly documenting the pattern for years. A week after the wedding, Emma came over to review the lawsuit. She read the documents and started laughing. She said it was a frivolous suit designed to harass us and would be dismissed. She suggested we countersue for assault, given my dad's slap. We could also sue for Chloe's threats, which were recorded on video. Emma helped us prepare the documentation. Having a legal sedge finally allowed me to sleep through the night. We went to the courthouse the next week to file for a protective order. Emma came with us, armed with screenshots of the threats and videos from the wedding. The judge reviewed everything, including statements from our neighbors about my dad's outburst. He granted a temporary order prohibiting both Dad and Chloe from coming within 500 feet of us, our home, and our workplaces. Dad violated the order within 48 hours, showing up at Liam's architectural firm. He bypassed security and started screaming at the receptionist. Security detained him and called the police while he fought them, screaming about me destroying his family. The police arrested him. Liam's boss called him in and suggested he work from home until the situation calmed down. Liam set up an office in our spare room. I woke up at 3:01 a.m. a few nights later to a strange scraping sound outside our window. My heart hammered as I peeked through the blinds. Chloe's car was parked across the street, just outside the 500-foot boundary. She was in the driver's seat, staring at our building. I watched for 20 minutes. She never moved. She stayed for 3 hours, a silent sentinel in the dark. Liam installed security cameras the next day. For 2 weeks, Chloe parked just outside the camera's range, every night. Kevin showed up at our door one afternoon, looking like he'd been through a war. His eyes were red-rimmed, his suit wrinkled. He slumped onto our couch. Dad had been staying with them since the wedding, and was driving Kevin insane with his constant tirades about me. Kevin said he was contemplating divorce because Chloe's obsession with me was making her physically ill. The stress was destroying their new marriage, and he couldn't take it. 3 days later, I went for a routine checkup. My blood pressure was sky high. Dr. Anya warned me again about the effects of long-term stress. The constant anxiety was literally making me sick, and I couldn't stop the tears. Liam held me as I sobbed in that sterile office. That night, Anna called, her voice trembling with rage. Someone had posted my private therapy information in a local online forum. My doctor's name, the clinic's address, even my appointment schedule. The post included fabricated details about my mental health, claiming I had a history of compulsive lying. Only someone with access to the clinic's system could have gotten that information. Liam immediately called the clinic's security, while I called Emma on speaker. She said this was a serious criminal offense. Emma called the next morning with shocking news. Kevin's sister, Linda, worked in the clinic's billing department and had accessed my records illegally. The clinic's IT audit found her login accessing my file 17 times. Linda was escorted out by security that afternoon, facing immediate termination and a criminal investigation. Kevin showed up at our door that evening, utterly destroyed. He had no idea his own sister was involved. The next day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Kevin. He was apologizing for Chloe's behavior and admitted she'd kept a rivalry journal since middle school, filled with ways to one-up me. He'd found it hidden in her luggage. He was scared for his own safety and was meeting with a divorce lawyer. He offered to testify for us. 3 weeks after the wedding, Chloe posted a fabricated story on Facebook. She claimed I'd been stalking her for years, including photoshopped pictures of me outside her apartment. The post had fake text messages she'd created. Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times. Strangers sent me death threats. Someone posted our address in the comments. Liam contacted the FBI about the cyberstalking. They took it seriously and opened an investigation. Meanwhile, my blood pressure continued to rise. Dr. Anya put me on medical leave from work and said I shouldn't leave the house. The world was shrinking, and being trapped at home while Chloe painted me as a villain felt like a prison sentence. I'm really wondering how Linda got involved in all this. Did Chloe manipulate her, or was it my dad who pressured her? The fact that she accessed the files 17 times makes me wonder what she was looking for. I watched from my couch as the hateful comments multiplied. Anna started taking screenshots for a defamation lawsuit. She documented every lie and threat. Liam took time off to stay home with me. He cooked all my meals and read to me when the anxiety got too bad. He'd hold my hand and tell me about the future we'd build, one free of all this chaos. His presence was the only thing keeping me anchored. 2 days later, the police arrived to arrest Linda for the privacy violations. She faced up to 10 years in prison. The investigation revealed she'd been feeding Chloe information for months. She'd sent Chloe notes from my therapy sessions. Kevin filed for divorce that same day, disgusted. The family was imploding. A month after the wedding, a process server arrived. My heart sank as Liam took the envelope. Chloe was suing us for alienation of affection and conspiracy to ruin her reputation. She demanded $500,000. We were already drowning in legal fees. Now we needed a civil attorney too. Emma called that night and told me to come to her office. She spread out files and started making lists. She filed 3 countersuits against Chloe for defamation, emotional distress, and harassment. She pressed criminal charges against my dad for the assault. She warned me this would be a long, ugly fight, but we had to push back. 2 weeks later, I woke up at 3:00 a.m. with crushing chest pains. Liam drove me to the ER while I struggled to breathe. The doctors ran tests and said I'd had a severe panic attack that mimicked a heart attack. They kept me for 2 days for observation. Chloe posted on Facebook that karma was finally catching up to me. Kevin visited me in the hospital, bringing flowers flowers he hid under his coat. He sat by my bed and apologized for everything. He told me Chloe had a history of mental health issues she'd hidden from him, refusing medication. He was documenting everything for their divorce. 6 weeks after the wedding, Anna organized a support party at our apartment. Friends from college and work showed up with food and wine. My coworkers brought gift cards, and our neighbors set up a potluck in the hallway. We were all in the living room when we heard screaming from the street. Chloe stood on the sidewalk below our window, screaming that I was turning everyone against her. Anna tried to guide her away, but Chloe shoved her. That's when Chloe crumpled to the ground, clutching her stomach. An ambulance arrived 15 minutes later as she screamed that I'd caused her to have a miscarriage from stress. The next morning, Liam and I sat in silence as our phones buzzed. Everyone was talking about how Chloe had been admitted to the hospital. I felt a strange sense of relief that there was no baby involved in this mess, even as I felt sick about her lie. Dad called that afternoon, his voice pure venom. He said Chloe had named the baby she lost Maya, just to spite me. Kevin texted that he was refusing to participate in her lies and had told the hospital the truth. 2 months after the wedding, Anna threw me a "We Survived" party. I was opening a bottle of wine when a process server handed me more papers. Chloe was seeking a restraining order, claiming my harassment had caused her phantom pregnancy and subsequent breakdown. The judge assigned to the case went to my dad's golf club. Emma was furious. Despite our evidence, the judge granted Chloe's order. We couldn't be within 500 feet of each other. Emma immediately filed for recusal, but it would take weeks. That night, I lay in bed feeling trapped. Liam held me while I cried about the injustice of it all. We were exhausted. 10 weeks passed. Anna showed up one morning with a dusty box from her attic. She'd saved all our childhood photos after my dad threw them out. I sat on the floor spreading them out. There was Chloe and me, ages 5 and 6, arms slung around each other, both with gappy, toothless grins. Another showed us in matching Power Ranger costumes she'd begged me to wear. Photo after photo of two girls who had once loved each other. My hands shook as I picked up one from my 10th birthday, where Chloe was helping me blow out the candles, her face alight with genuine joy for me. Anna sat down and rubbed my back as I cried. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. This was about mental illness consuming the sister I once knew. Kevin called that afternoon. He'd filed for an emergency divorce after finding a journal where Chloe had written "Arrest Maya" over and over for 20 pages. She'd also been refusing her prescriptions. The judge granted his petition. When the process server showed up at my dad's house, Chloe lost it. She grabbed my dad's car keys and sped off while he blocked the server's path. They vanished. Kevin was at the police station within an hour. A bolo alert went out for Chloe in the car. I sat glued to my phone. Around midnight, police found them at a casino 2 states over. Both were arrested. The news showed Chloe screaming and fighting, while my dad yelled about persecution. Emma called us into her office. She spread files across her desk showing assault, threats, harassment, and now fleeing the state charges. The prosecutor was pushing for jail time. Emma looked at me and asked if I was prepared to testify and send my father and sister to prison. The room spun. Liam grabbed my hand as I nodded. My uncle, my dad's brother, showed up the next week looking 10 years older. His own family was in turmoil. He sat at our kitchen table and apologized for 30 years of enabling my dad's favoritism. He admitted he'd always seen it, but chose to avoid conflict. He cried as he told me he should have protected me. 3 months after the wedding, I was in a deposition room when a sharp pain shot through my side. The lawyer kept asking questions. Another pain hit, harder. Liam jumped up as I doubled over. The stenographer called 911. At the hospital, doctors said the stress had caused a gallbladder attack. They managed it with medication, but warned that surgery was inevitable if the stress continued. Meanwhile, Emma's appeal worked. The recusal was granted. A new judge threw out Chloe's restraining order and issued bench warrants for her and my dad for violating the original order. Justice seemed possible, but I was living on a diet of bland food and anti-anxiety pills. I spent my days watching Chloe's fake social media accounts, where she portrayed herself as a martyr. She seemed completely detached from reality. Did Chloe really write "Erase Maya" over and over for 20 whole pages? That's so specific and chilling. I wonder if she was trying to process her anger, or if it was a sign of a much deeper psychosis. Liam brought news that changed everything. His firm was transferring him to their new office in Denver, with a promotion and relocation package. After everything, they wanted him out of the local drama. He held my hand as we talked about leaving it all behind. Part of me felt relief, but another part felt like I was running away. 2 days later, Chloe showed up at the hospital where I was having a follow-up. Security stopped her, but she screamed loud enough for the whole waiting room to hear that she hoped my gallbladder would explode. 3 people witnessed it. Emma added witness intimidation to the list of charges. 14 weeks after that disastrous wedding, Kevin showed up at my apartment. His divorce was final. The papers were signed. He was moving to Chicago to start over. Away from the wreckage, I pressed my hand against the window and watched him leave. An innocent man caught in my family's toxic web. Emma called the next morning. The DA was taking over, combining everything into one criminal case against both Chloe and my dad. We were now witnesses for the state in a felony trial. The arraignment was on a Tuesday. I watched the news coverage from home. Dad stood in an orange jumpsuit next to Chloe. Then he grabbed his chest and collapsed. Bailiffs rushed in, starting CPR while Chloe screamed that I was killing him. They rushed him out. The news said he'd had a massive heart attack. Despite everything, a strange pang of grief hit me. My uncle showed up an hour later. Dad was stable but critical in the cardiac ICU. He said Dad kept asking for me, claiming he'd had an epiphany. Liam shook his head, saying there was no way I was going near him, but something in me broke. I told the nurse I wanted to see him, with security present. He looked so frail in that bed. His face was gray. He reached for my hand, his fingers trembling, and started to cry. He said he'd lived vicariously through Chloe because he was jealous. I'd built a life without his approval. The words didn't fix the years of hurt, but it was an admission I never thought I'd hear. 2 weeks later, I was back at home, watching the local news rehash our family drama. Local feud turns criminal, the headline scrolled. I rubbed my side and realized any children I had would one day Google their family and find this mess. That's when the anchor mentioned leaked documents from Chloe's psychiatric evaluation. She'd been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. Her lawyer was pivoting to an insanity defense. Kevin texted me that he was just glad to be free. Anna showed up the next day with balloons and a cake, saying she was throwing me a fresh start party. Just a few close friends came. We sat around eating cake, and no one mentioned the drama. Everyone talked about my potential new life in Denver. Liam never left my side, sleeping on the couch when I was too anxious to be alone. I'd wake up to hear him researching Denver neighborhoods, looking for quiet streets and good parks. His voice was my lifeline. Then 2 weeks later, all hell broke loose. Chloe escaped from her psychiatric hold. She'd faked a seizure and slipped out during the chaos. Security footage showed her stealing a box cutter from a maintenance cart before heading for the parking garage. She made it to my apartment complex, screaming my name and waving the box cutter. 3 neighbors called 911. Police tackled her before she could get inside the building. The judge ordered her held without bail in a secure facility. The prosecutor called 2 days later to fast-track the trial. Emma came to my apartment with boxes of files to prep me for testifying. She showed me pictures of the evidence, videos, witness statements, screenshots. The prep took hours, dredging up every painful memory. Kevin showed up the next afternoon. He sat on my couch and, after a few minutes of small talk, asked if Liam and I would be his emergency contacts. He said he knew it was crazy, but he had no one else left from that chapter of his life. He wanted to know someone would be there if something happened. Liam squeezed my hand, and we both said yes. 3 days later, my doctor scheduled my gallbladder surgery. It was set for next Thursday, right in the middle of the trial. I spent the night staring at the calendar, feeling like the universe had a sick sense of humor. The morning of my testimony, Emma set up the video link in my living room. The judge's face appeared, then the jury, then Chloe, in an orange jumpsuit, staring blankly. Emma had warned me not to look, but I did. Her lips were moving silently. The prosecutor asked me to describe the wedding. I told them everything. Then he asked about our childhood, and I listed every sabotaged achievement. The jury scribbled notes. When they asked about the elopement announcement, Chloe looked up, and our eyes met through the screen before she resumed her silent muttering. My uncle visited that evening with old home movies he digitized. We watched videos of Chloe and me as kids, playing in a sprinkler. There was one where she was teaching me to ride a bike, cheering when I got my balance. Liam held me as I cried for the sister I'd lost. Dad took the stand 2 days later. Emma texted me updates. He admitted to hitting me and told the court he'd always favored Chloe. The prosecutor asked if he'd noticed her pattern of disruption, and Dad said he thought I was being overly sensitive. But when they showed him the timeline, even he had to admit it looked deliberate. He begged the judge to send Chloe to treatment, not prison. The next morning, they played the wedding videos. Emma said several jurors looked physically ill. What makes someone decide to wave a box cutter around in an apartment complex? The way Chloe faked that seizure shows she was lucid enough to plan an escape. But then she completely lost control. The threat was bad enough, but the vacant look in her eyes made it worse. When they got to the part where she screamed about it being her day, she suddenly stood up, yelling that the video was fake. The judge ordered her to sit down, but she kept screaming until bailiffs had to physically remove her. Anna stopped by that afternoon with 2 plane tickets to Denver and a photo album. She'd asked our friends to write messages for us. Reading the well wishes made me realize how much support we had. Kevin testified the following day, bringing the journal titled Erase Maya. He read entries describing plans to ruin my life. Some had crude drawings of me in tears. Even Dad looked horrified. Kevin's voice cracked as he read an entry where Chloe wrote about wanting to poison my food at my own wedding someday. During his testimony, Chloe started screaming that she'd kill everyone who betrayed her. The judge ordered her removed and mandated a full psychiatric evaluation. She was to be held at the state mental facility indefinitely. 2 weeks later, the judge declared Chloe mentally unfit to stand trial. The court committed her to the state hospital for long-term treatment. Dad's case went forward. Liam held my hand as we heard the news. The next morning, I had my surgery. Liam and I spent the night before talking about raising our future kids away from this toxicity. We promised to break the cycle. When they wheeled me into the OR, Liam held my hand until I went under. When I woke up, Nathan was in the hallway, tears on his face. He was finally free to be a supportive uncle. 3 days after my surgery, Nathan visited with news. Dad was convicted of assault, but got probation and mandatory anger management. The judge issued a permanent no-contact order. Nathan said Dad was starting to accept his role in the chaos, but I didn't care about his redemption. A week later, Emma brought the mail to my house. A letter from Chloe's facility. My hands shook as I opened it. She'd written to apologize and to announce she was filing for divorce from Kevin, citing irreconcilable differences. Kevin showed up an hour later, relieved that the final tie was being cut. The twins weren't part of this story, but the desire for a family was. We started trying a month after my surgery. Grace visited daily with updates on our Denver house hunt. Emma filed the paperwork to transfer the protective orders to Colorado. On our last night in town, Anna hosted a goodbye dinner. My uncle handed us a photo album. He promised to visit. Liam and I toasted to new beginnings. The next morning at the airport, I saw her. Chloe stood near a gate with a medical aide, wearing sweatpants. Her face was puffy, her hands trembled. She saw me, her face crumpled, and she mouthed, "I'm sorry," before the aide led her away. It was the last time I ever saw her. On the plane, Liam scrolled through Denver house listings. An older man across the aisle smiled, saying what a lovely couple we made. He had no idea we were refugees. When we landed, my phone lit up. Emma had messaged. Chloe had been committed involuntarily for at least a year. Dad was selling the family home. The legal battles were over. Our new house in Denver was perfect, but I couldn't relax. Every noise made me jump. Liam found us a couples therapist specializing in family trauma. My uncle called 2 weeks later. Dad had started therapy. He'd written us a long, remorseful letter. It was a start. A month into our new life, I took a pregnancy test. It was positive. Real smiles, real tears. This perfect moment reminded me why we fought so hard. Then Emma called. Chloe had been moved to a long-term facility upstate. Even after everything, I felt sick for her broken mind. Kevin decided to travel the world. How did Chloe see them at the airport? The timing was so coincidental. Her standing there right as they were leaving for good. We agreed to send postcards. 3 months into our new life, the final legal papers arrived. All charges resolved. The protective orders permanent. Our old life was officially over. The war was done, but the scars remained. Going back to work felt strange. My new office had glass walls. For a second, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. My coworkers talked about normal things. During lunch, I'd look at pictures of our new house. 3 weeks in, my boss asked me out for team drinks, and I said yes. Sitting in that bar, listening to normal people, felt like putting on a costume that finally fit. My therapist office had gray walls and a fountain. I sat on her couch. I eloped for revenge. I finally said, not for love, but to hurt my sister. She just nodded and asked how that felt now. Empty, I told her, and guilty, and still angry. She said healing meant owning all the ugly parts. 6 months in Denver, my uncle called asking to visit for the baby shower. I almost said no, but Liam took the phone and agreed. He showed up looking older. He handed me a gift. Your dad made it. Inside was a hand-carved wooden rocking horse. Tucked in the mane was an envelope in my dad's handwriting. I didn't open it. My uncle played with our new puppy, then left. The horse went in the nursery, but not the letter. Anna called 2 months later. She got a job offer in Denver. A week later, she had an apartment 5 blocks away. She brought takeout and held my hand while I complained about morning sickness. Ryan visited too on a business trip. We had game nights and barbecues. No one mentioned the past. 8 months in Denver, Liam suggested we have another wedding. Do it right this time, he said. Just us. I kissed him and said yes. The ceremony was in our backyard with Anna and my uncle. Anna recorded it on her phone while our puppy tried to eat the flowers. Liam wrote vows about choosing me every day. I just said I loved him and meant it. We slow danced in the kitchen with no music. A letter came from Chloe's facility 9 months after we moved. A doctor explained she was making progress. She had written apology letters. Would we consider supervised contact? The letter went into a folder marked someday. Our daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday. Liam held her first. I watched him cry, and my heart, which had been clenched for so long, finally eased. He was already the father I knew he would be. Some nights I dreamed of Chloe, the one who taught me to ride a bike. I woke up grieving a girl who might have only existed in my memory. Liam held me without questions. 1 year in Denver meant 1 year since the wedding. I posted a single photo of our daughter sleeping. The caption, "The best revenge is a life well lived." I turned off the comments. Some stories don't need an audience. The park near our house had baby swings. Liam pushed our daughter while I sat on a bench, watching our little family. A woman sat next to me and said how peaceful we looked. For the first time, I believed her. Our daughter will know her story someday. She'll know about her aunt and her grandfather and why we live so far away. But today, she just knew that daddy made airplane noises and mommy always had snacks. And her world was safe and small and full of love. That was enough. That was everything. And that's where we are. It's been a journey telling this. So thanks for sticking with me. It's wild how sharing these things can make them feel a little lighter. Catch you all in the next one. Don't forget to hit subscribe. It makes a difference.